And we should be, everyone, we are now live into the airways. Good evening, it's Rail Natter. It's episode 226 of Rail Natter. Ireland's it's the first in a little mini-series about Ireland's railways. Very kindly, Anna is joining us, sat in the green room right now, drinking whiskey, etc., etc. The first of these episodes of this little mini-series is going to be a little potted history. This might be a two-parter, it might be a three-parter. Ian and I have not decided yet. Ian's in the chat as well, which is good fun. So, yeah, Ireland's Railways, a potted history. Episode 226. So we have, as a preview image, we have on screen right now a shot from a platform looking out across. I'll tell you what, Ian, what are we looking at right now? Tell us what we're looking at. I see quite a few trains and some nice double feathered signals and quite a bit. Tell us what's going on.
Right, so well, I thought seeing, we'll start off with where we are, I suppose. We're in Euston Station here. We're looking west out of the station, out of Dublin. I believe on the right that would be an intercity rail car, and on the left is a 201 class locomotive. Now, there's a funny coincidence here, I thought, seeing as we're on episode 226, I think.
Yeah. Very nice.
I would find 201 class number 226, and as it happens, it is called Owen the Shore, or River Shore, and they're all named after rivers. And that would be my favourite one of that class.
Oh, very nice. It's a nice story. And yes, 226, very nice. Well, I should have made this the back of the episode art, shouldn't I? Really? No, in fact, but yes, indeed, we are talking. So all the stuff that's going on tonight's episode, everyone, is going to be dedicated to explaining why it is like that. that's the plan. Everyone's in terms of balance. Everyone, okay? Do you want me to? I'm going to bring you down a little bit. Everyone, tell me about sound balance, and I'll correct that as we go. So let's. I mean, without further ado, basically, let's get started. Everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. No, wait, no, and there now we can do it. Everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. And as the InCity 225 fades away. I'm looking forward to this one. So we've done a bit of Irish episode action. Detour is already dissing my Irish pronunciation because I basically default into like a mixture of Welsh and Gaelic pronunciation, which is often not correct for Irish pronunciation. Detour is saying hi from Cork. Well, I tell you what, here is a map of Ireland, but before we talk about said map of Ireland, firstly, Ian, let's introduce you. Ian is over there. Hello. Today's nominated Irish rail expert. Ian, tell everyone, introduce yourself as you wish to, and before we get cracking. So why did you decide that you were going to tell us about Ireland's railways and a bit of Irish history?
Right, we'll go way back. I've always had an interest in the railways as a kid, but living in the middle of the countryside in Ireland, they're kind of hard to come by, and I didn't really realize. I mean, I'd have fun as a child going on a train. Didn't really realize how much I liked them. Now, more recently, I realized, okay, I really like the railways, and I suppose I see them as this tool to help climate change, which is another interest of mine. Let's say, kind of important.
Absolutely.
Then, a while ago I started doing videos on YouTube. I think I've only done 4 or something, looking at the history of the railways in Ireland. Came across Rail Natter a while ago. I thought, did I really want to watch something that's an hour long?
No, yes, no one should watch. It's so long. No one should ever watch it. It's just such a long. No, everyone should, of course. No, it's long form. It's relaxed.
I was pleasantly surprised. Anyway, I thought I'd share a bit of knowledge about the railways in Ireland.
Absolutely. Shang Lucy is saying the animations are great. They enjoy your animations. So this is a mostly not entirely, but a mostly animation free episode. But you've snuck a few in here and there. So anyway,
I tried not to have any fancy effects.
I hope we've got some spinning and some ricochet sounds and some stuff going like this. Onto the screen. Right, okay, so without further ado, let's miniaturize our faces and get talking. First of all, we do have to answer the question, what is Ireland? And more importantly, what are the important bits of Ireland? So take it away. And essentially, Ian, it's your episode, so I look forward to being a passenger on this one and asking daft questions throughout.
Okay, so well, here we see this lovely island.
It is quite lovely. It's very fetching. It is a fetching shaped island, isn't it? Anyway,
a bit crinkly on the west edge, but sure, gives it character.
Yeah.
So geography-wise, I suppose, the centre of the country, very much flat, the Midlands, and that stretches out towards the Dublin area a bit. And then mountains are mostly around the coastline. So we often say in Ireland that it's like a saucer. Also, the cities are around the coastline. The big cities. It's only smaller towns in the centre of the country. Overall, the population is quite small. I should know off the top of my head now, but it's 7, 8, not 8 million yet, I'd say. Reached the high of 8 million before the Great Famine in 1845.
It's worth reminding people
that since.
Yeah, I was going to say it's worth reminding people that the population has not reached the level after the famine inflicted on Ireland by this lot over here. This lot. It still hasn't recovered. That's worth. Let's just put a pin in that. Population still hasn't recovered from a famine inflicted on Ireland by Britain. So just going to put a pin in that.
Right. So cities. I've distinguished them there. Capital cities are stars, and any city over 100,000 is a square. Belfast and Dublin are obviously both over 100,000 population. So I have the population figures here. Dublin, this is all according to the Central Statistics Office in Ireland, and I'm not sure where I got the Northern Ireland figures. Anyway, Dublin about 1.2 million people. Then Cork, much smaller, immediately at 220,000 people. This is city and suburbs.
Yeah.
Limerick then 102,000, and then Galway 85,000, 86,000, and then Waterford down at 60,000. So they're all the cities in Ireland. And then in Northern Ireland here, obviously cities are, I don't know, would charter still be the right word to use, but they're less based on size. But we've got Belfast and Derry cities. Belfast is 350,000 and Derry about 100,000 again. So I've also marked out airports and ports here, just for a bit of information. Obviously Dublin Airport, we'll go clockwise. And then there's Dublin Port. And then there's Dunleary Port, also in Dublin. I don't think you'll get any passenger sailings from there anymore. I think they've stopped, and I doubt there's any freight. Dublin Port has a rail connection, although only for freight, no passenger service. Dunleary Port does have a rail station. It's on the Dart, so I think it's terrible there's no passenger sailings from there. Dublin Airport, as we all know, has not got a connection. I think it's the biggest airport in Europe not to have a rail connection. Hopefully being fixed soon, as we will look at in future episodes. And then in the southeast corner here, there's Rosslare Europort. Has a rail connection. Port is managed by Irish Rail. The main way to go to the south of Wales or to France. And then there's Waterford Port then. Waterford Port is freight only, but it has a rail connection. And then there's the Port of Cork, which is in Cove. Cork Airport, significantly smaller than Dublin Airport. And then there's Farranfore Airport, which I believe is, the only one in the country with a rail connection. Although you have to walk a few hundred meters down a footpath by a road in the middle of the countryside. Limerick then, Foynesport on the River Shannon, Shannon Airport. There's a small airport in Connemara in Galway, near kind of west of the city, just for getting out to small islands. Knock Airport then, the northwest, and then Donegal Airport, which I think primarily exists because there's no rail service there, and it takes an age to get to Dublin because there's no motorways either. So that shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Anyway, Derry Airport, and then Belfast has a port, and then it has two airports. So to the west, not really close to the city at all, is the International Airport, and then the city airport is technically connected to the railway, but it's not accessible. You have to go up and over a footbridge over a dual carriageway and walk along for like maybe a kilometre, I don't know, probably less, a few hundred metres. And then there's Larnport as well to the northeast of Belfast, where you may get ferries to Scotland. So I think that kind of gives everyone a good idea of the geography of the place.
Yeah, and the answer to the question, this is OpenStreetMap for anyone curious as to what we're looking at. This is the OpenStreetMap view of the island of Ireland. Yeah, lovely. Okay, so there's the overview, the grand overview. Now, well, I'll tell you what, this image is pertinent from recent news. So tell us what we're looking at, but also, tell us what the rail network looks like.
Right. So as you can see here, this is an image from the All Ireland Rail Review, which has been published recently, the last few weeks. So this is the existing network, along with some promised expansions. Let me just zoom in on my own version here, sorry, so I can see what I'm looking at.
Yeah, you've got. I mean, this. So I think the key thing to comment on here is the inclusion, or is this is showing. This is not what the long-term strategic plan is in terms of what to upgrade. These are the things that are in the pipeline at the moment in terms of. Yeah. So for example, I know that the work going on down to Wicklow, because I was working on that until pretty recently. So that's kind of single track expansion of Dart down to Wicklow. There's lots of other Dart upgrades kind of in and around the Dublin area. And then there's also the improvements to create a double track connection from Limerick Junction up to Limerick, and then with a port connection to Foynes as well. So that's the upgrade list of what's currently proposed. There are also upgrade plans for the line to Derry as well from Coleraine, I believe. That's
a very busy line for single track.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, the Cork suburban network is getting a bit of work.
Oh yes, you're right. Yeah.
But overall, the railway network is very radial. All goes to Dublin or Belfast.
Yep.
With the exception of this line here: Waterford, Clonmel, Limerick Junction, Limerick, Ennis, Athenry, Galway.
Yeah.
An orbital line as opposed to radial.
Yeah.
However, between Waterford and Limerick Junction, 2 trains per day per direction. Not a good service at all.
No.
Anyway. We'll get more into that.
Yeah, we'll get into it. So it gives a useful. I don't want to get too much into the detail list because I want to make sure there's plenty of time to go into the history. But it gives an idea of what the network looks like. As you say, very much spokes into Dublin and really a little bit around Belfast. But to be honest, Dublin is the core of the island of Ireland's rail network.
And there's a large divide as well between the 2 stations in Dublin. There's Connolly Station, which sees the lines to Sligo, Rosslare, and up to Northern Ireland. And then Houston Station, which sees all of the rest of them. Yeah. Now, it is bridged by suburban rail, commuter, they call it. But you can't easily get the train from Houston to Connolly. You have to get the tram.
Yeah. So, not an ideal, definitely not an ideal rail network, and absolutely not ideal when you look at what the railway could be achieving. But anyway, let's park that because we need to talk about the past, and this is what we're here to talk about. So without further ado, Ian, let's get cracking. You not tap me on the shoulder verbally when you want me to press ahead with the next slide, please. But we start, by the look of it, in 1834.
Yes. So this is the start of the railways in Ireland. This was the first terminus in Dublin. So it's got a couple of firsts, I suppose. The first railway in Ireland, first commuter railway in the world. It operated a very frequent service, trains every 30 minutes and up to 15 minutes in the peak, which is quite frequent for such an early railway, I suppose. Yeah. It linked Dublin and Dunleary, which you may remember from the port. At the time, it was called Kingstown, which is why it has not got an English spelling for the name now. Yep. They wiped that away with.
Yes, goodbye to that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. No more royalty. Obviously, it opened without this bridge through the front over the road, and that was a later addition. It did start as a terminus. So I think we can head on then to the next slide.
I'll briefly. I'll tell you what. I need to remember to audio describe. We're looking at a fairly fetching, if I'd say architecturally hodgepodge station building. There's at the lower part of the station. There's stonework on the flanks of the building, and then there's a lot of brickwork and looking very. Well, the flanking walls are looking quite King's Cross, actually, and probably not so different in terms of contemporaneity. But the frontage,
it does have a nice arched roof like King's Cross would.
Yeah, it does have. Although they've covered it in corrugated iron by the look of it, so it's not on the edge on this facing side. It's not quite as fetching as it could be, and I dare say was originally. The facing is quite interesting though, because it's formed of a very different finishing of a combination of glass and sort of painted facade, which is quite fetching, really. I mean, it could definitely do with a lick of paint, but it's quite fetching. And then someone has indeed, at a more recent date, smashed a hole in it and put a bridge, which again is fairly ornate, but it's ornate in a much later Victorian sort of style or sort of mid-Victorian style, whereas and I dare say that the mid-Victorian style is what the facade that matches the bridge has probably been, I dare say, added to when the bridge went through it, because it doesn't really architecturally match the much more austere brickwork on this flanks. But this is just me looking at the picture. I'm sure.
I would imagine it had a nice facade with maybe offices, hotel. I don't know. Probably not a hotel at that stage.
Yeah, but anyway, someone smashed a hole in it, but it did make it a useful, provided a useful through service,
which we will get to later.
Indeed, right. So that's 1834. We move to a map. We have a map, and it's showing the line between Dublin through along to the coast via kind of where was it going through? Going through sort of
Sandy Mount.
Yeah, Sandy Mount, Blackrock,
Booterstown, Blackrock.
Yeah.
To Dunleary.
To Dunleary, yeah. And this is the line that does eventually end up, or the Dart line that will eventually end up down to, or is it? Ooh, spoiler alert. But a line that continues on and provides a service in the future. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of ourselves. Right. Also on screen is a fetching little picture, a fetching little sort of coloured engraving showing the classic old-fashioned railway line style of just the rails with gravel up to the railhead and some fetching little stagecoach boxes on wheels and some quite interesting-looking kind of Greco sort of kind of new Renaissance. In fact, no, what would I call that? I'd just call it Greco-Roman sort of style architecture of a bridge there passing over it. So tell us what's going on. What are we looking at here?
Well, the little picture here is a footbridge, which was built on with the opening of the line, I'm pretty sure, for a certain Lord Cloncurry, who owned land right behind where the railway went. And he was not too happy about having his land cut off from the sea. And so he got his little footbridge over to get to the beach.
It's very fetching. Is it
it's
still
no longer
there?
in use today, but
is the building still there? Oh, nice. That's good to know.
I believe it's around Blackrock, maybe between Blackrock and Sea Point, but I wouldn't swear to it. Can't remember. Also, about this line, It was opened on standard gauge, so very well prepared. But as we'll see on the next slide, that didn't end up doing so well.
Okay, so let's hop to the next slide. So we're now at a new date, 1843, and we're looking down the tracks, a contemporary image down the tracks. But tell us what's going on here.
So this is Sutton on the Dart. There's a reason I'm looking down the tracks, and that is, as I said, when the Dublin and Kingstown Dunleary Railway opened, it was standard gauge. Next railway to open, the Ulster Railway out of Belfast to Portadown, it was 6 foot 2 inches, or 1880 millimeter gauge.
Oh, very
that
wide.
was recommended by the Irish Railway Commission. And then the next railway to open after that used a different gauge as well. This time 5 foot 2 inches, 1575 mil.
So we're still not there yet. Okay.
So yeah, despite a strong start, we did not end up with a standard. At which the Ulster Railway complained. They were like, "Look, we followed the recommendation. Why do they get to have a narrower gauge? And like, what happens when we want to link and do a Dublin-Belfast railway?" So the Board of Trade did an investigation, and they picked 1600 millimeter, nice, very round, 5 foot 3 inch gauge in 1843. And if we head on, I believe we will see an 1846 Act for the regulation of gauge.
Yes.
And if you wouldn't mind reading it out, because it is a bit small.
Yes, I shall. I shall read it out. And this is the full UK-wide Act. This is the same Act that set gauge everywhere, including not just in Ireland, but in Great Britain as well. "It shall not be lawful, except as hereinafter accepted, to construct any railway for the conveyance of passengers on any gauge other than 4 feet 8 inches and half an inch in Great Britain, and 5 feet 3 inches in Ireland." There we go. So there are 5 foot 3 inches, or as we ought to know it, 1600 mil. A beautiful number that should have been adopted nationally or internationally, however, was not. But there we go.
And it saddens me that one day we will probably have to see it go.
Yes.
Standardization.
Yes, very likely. I mean, it would make some sense to re-gauge to standard gauge, much as it will be sad to see the loss of what is a superior gauge from a variety of engineering perspectives. But superior from an engineering perspective does not necessarily mean superior from a systems perspective, and it does make a lot of sense to re-gauge. Lots of people say, no, you don't need to re-gauge. You can still have gauge changing this and gauge changing that, but it's much more costly to buy new rolling stock for anywhere in Ireland than it needs to be. You can't really do off the shelf stuff in the same way, or at least
if you were to keep it, I would say just do dual gauge on the lines that operate internationally. Yeah. If we ever get to that stage.
Well, quite, yeah. But it's funny because it's a very, very small market for rolling stock. The UK market is a very small market relatively for rolling stock, but at least our gauge is standard, even if our track gauge is standard, even if our loading gauge is not. But Ireland has the disadvantage of small loading gauge and a unique track gauge, which is adds additional complexity. Anyway, Detour, by the way,
because the Irish Rail's loading gauge information document on their website was scanned using a potato, I think. But I think the loading gauge may be slightly more forgiving than
it is. It is slightly more forgiving, but it's not. It's definitely
not very big,
it's comparable with it's comparable with the rest of the or rather, it's comparable with Britain's the GB loading gauge rather than the mainline European loading gauge. A few little things I'm going to say quickly. Hannah Goodliff, you're right. Neoclassical was the word I was hunting for. Detour is pointing out that little footbridge is just at the back of Trinity College Dublin, near the Science End. Thanks, Deirdre. That's very useful. Anyway, let's crack on because time is short and we've got stories to tell. So we're at 1891 and a very fetching view down the river with a couple of different structures here. A very nice truss. Simple span supported structure, and then an even more fetching shallow arch structure as well in advance of it. Fetching view down by the river here.
Yeah, I believe that bridge near Trinity College at the Science End is the bridge out of Pierce Station or Westland Row at the time. The train rail bridge.
Okay.
I believe is what is being referred to there.
Okay, thanks.
Which is related to this. bridge
okay.
here across the Liffey.
Hmm.
So, 1891, there was a problem. Mail from post from from Great Britain to America went through Ireland, Irish mail route.
Yep.
It arrived in Kingstown, Dunleary, and it was conveyed by train and through the streets in Dublin City to Cork and to Cove, which was Queenstown. But obviously you don't want to be bringing the post through the streets, so they needed to link the railways in Dublin, which at the time had been split either side of the Liffey. There was a route from Euston Station into the docks and into Connolly Station, but nothing crossed the river. So they built a bridge. Now, there was a lot of annoyance about it because it would make that this road bridge here, which is the Butt Bridge, I think, it was a swing bridge, wouldn't be able to be a swing bridge anymore. There was worries about views of the Custom House, which is behind that tree there.
Oh, yeah.
But they got it built. So that came in very useful for the Dart later on, as you can see by
Absolutely.
the electrification on it there. So conscious of time.
Yes, it's just a very fetching view down the river, really, and a very appealing view that people should go and have a plod around. Maps. 1906 we have reached, and we are looking. Well, I'll tell you. I'll read the title of the map, which is the Vice-Regal Commission on Irish Railways, including Right Railways, 1906. 10 statute miles to 1 inch, and there are some railways on this map.
And there are a lot of railways on this map. So this was not even the height of the railways. It's almost there. I think the largest network was around 1920, just before the War of Independence. Not a good sign for later. So it's just a good view of the railway network we had. And I'll give you a look at the networks, I suppose, if we progress to the next slide, what different companies there were.
Yes, so we've got rid of the orange, and we're now going to we've added. I'll read through these. So and just add in a bit. So I'll hammer through. So first we have the Great Southern and Western Railway, the GSWR, which comes out of Dublin and links down to comes down on the main line to Limerick Junction, then up to Galway, down to Cork and to Cove. And then with branches sort of weaving around similarly, and then also Waterford. There's the line to Waterford as well. So it's kind of it does what it says on the tin. It's the southern and western direction from Dublin, right?
And that combined from a few fairly large railways, which is why it ended up being the biggest.
Yes. Then we have the Great Northern Railway (brackets Ireland), which is the link between Dublin and Belfast, and also out. So up to Derry, and then is the kind of actually the main line is really from Dublin to Derry with a branch that goes to Belfast. That's really what the actual arrangement looks like, and then there are kind of branches going in different minor branches going in different directions, including out towards the coast and Donegal Bay. So that's the GNR. Next is the Midland Great Western Railway. Which runs pretty much in a straight line from Dublin to Galway, is the main line, and then branches going up to Sligo, over to testing my Ireland knowledge now, over to the bay that's in the kind of the mid, the kind of the central western side of the coast that I've forgotten the name of, the bay there. Possibly, and then across also there's a branch that runs up from Galway beyond as well. It's not like Clew Bay or something like that, is it? I don't trust what's written on this map, because this map is from when Empire made a right mess of your Fair Isle.
Most of it should be right.
Yeah. Anyway, so it just branches. So
anglicized names.
Yeah, very much occupying the Midlands, the kind of the northern Midlands there, and then we've got the Belfast and Northern Counties Railway, which it very much does what it says on the tin. It's occupying the space from Belfast north and across to kind of around, kind of what, Portbush, Foyle up to Derry and kind of around there. And
owned by the Midland Railway in Great Britain at some stage.
Yes. The Midland, the MR did indeed buy it. Then we have the Dublin, Wicklow and Wexford Railway, which has got all sorts of fun sort of sequential history there. the railway at Wicklow is kind of fun because it first went to Wicklow into a terminus and then it got extended with an horrible great kink over the river.
Yeah.
And then the current Wicklow station's on that kink, or rather in a very brief bit of straight track next to that kink. And then up
It's
further
also
kinks.
sliding into the sea between Bray and Wicklow.
Yeah.
A lot of coastal erosion. They'd really want to hang on to the alignment, but they'd be better off building a new double-tracked alignment.
Yes, that's
Anyway.
true. Yes, and it'd be very helpful for a variety of reasons as well, because the timetable is kind of on the edge there. And then a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to make appear here. So the Belfast and County Down Railway, the Cork, Bandon and South Coast Railway, the County Donegal Railways, Joint Committee in the Londonderry, Lough Swilly. Is that Lough Swilly? No, it won't be because it's Irish. So it's Lough Swilly Railway. All of which are kind of in a bit, and then a bunch of other stuff as well. So it's all of a sudden we see there's quite a long list of railway companies here. So what's in 1906 and beyond? What's the significance of these railways? What's about to happen to them? We should, next slide. 1921. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to get rid of our faces because our faces are covering some other people's faces. So I'm going to briefly hide our faces.
Here we have the signing of the Anglo-Irish Treaty, bringing the end to the War of Independence.
You beat our asses. That's right. The Irish beat our asses almost.
Very controversial, though. Loads of people thought we shouldn't have accepted it because it meant we left Northern Ireland behind.
Yes.
Still Dominion status. But we were able to kind of leave that out of the Constitution later on, kind of on the quiet. And there's no retaliation possible.
It was an imperfect conclusion to a big mess, but as an imperial force, it was in a way an important tipping point for Britain and its views on how it controlled other places. So it had wider ramifications around the globe. Anyway, 1921, and this had other significance. So if I flick to the next slide, well, here's a picture of a steam train. Here's a steam locomotive. It's 1925. I'm going to bring our little faces back. So it's 1925. This is it's a 460 is my informed opinion looking at this picture. Is it? It's also it's got GS written on the side, if I'm not mistaken.
So, what happened in 1925 was the Great Southern and Western Railway, the biggest, announced that it would shut down because they just couldn't anymore. There'd been the War of Independence, and then there'd been a civil war shortly after over the result of the War of Independence, as often happens. So seeing the importance of the railways, the government decided to create Great Southern Railways, which was an amalgamation of all of the railways that fell entirely within the Irish Free State.
And there they are. There's the map.
That is it.
Looking very fetching.
So this was good in many ways. The railway did close some duplicate trackage, although there was not much of it in Ireland, fairly quickly.
Yep.
However, railways such as every railway in Donegal and the Great Northern Railway, because they were split by the border, did not get to take part in this. And they also had their revenue cut massively by the border, especially the Great Northern Railway. I think if you wanted to take a train from Dublin to Derry, you would have to pass border checks like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 times maybe.
Yeah,
it was a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
messy. Which is, as you say, why the 1921 agreement is one of many reasons the 1921 agreement is imperfect. I
think they expected to redraw the borders and that it might be more representative of where mostly Protestant, mostly Catholic areas were, but that never happened. They just kind of wanted to hold on to it.
Yeah. They didn't want to open. Yeah, it's like opening a can of worms. They didn't want to risk that. The British Empire didn't want to risk that it would lose more. Absolutely. So that was 1925. Jump forwards 20 years, and we reach the end of the Second World War, and we have a picture here, which is this picture from 1945? I suspect it's a little bit recent than that. I see Mark I derived coaches, and I see a diesel locomotive. So this and some vehicles that look decidedly 70s. So this looks more like it's probably the early 80s or the late 70s.
I'd imagine that's General Motors electromotive diesel.
Yes, it's an EMD. Yeah. Related to the ones that were running in Yugoslavia at this time as well. They're pulling the blue train. But anyway, I digress. So 1945.
So
what are we looking at?
For this picture is because that's a nationalised railway. So if we cue the next transition, we'll see that we have Córas Iompar Éireann, commonly known as CIE. It had no English name, but it would roughly translate to Irish Transport Network. So they were in charge of everything, really. It was came into being on the 1st of January 1945 and was an amalgamation of Great Southern Railways and the Dublin United Transport Company, which had run trams.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I imagine it had all moved over to buses by then, unfortunately.
Boo.
Yeah. So, formed by the Transport Act of 1944, and then there was a weird in-between period, but it was formally nationalised in 1950.
Oh, okay. So there's a bit of a sort of strange kind of limbo for a few years. Understandable.
It stole the logo from the Dublin Transport.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm going to jump. It stole the logo. The railway stole the CIE stole the logo from the Dublin Transport Company. Did it? Interesting.
And kind of representative of how well it was performing, the logo got referred to colloquially as the flying snail.
Oh dear.
We might have to look at that in future episodes.
So I do want to describe what we're looking at, because what we're looking at right now, the 1945 image, is very fetching. It's of almost like a 00 sort of diorama in terms of how much is going on. You've got a lovely station with some lovely old valancing, station canopies still original. You've got an embedded wagonway in the road here that's kind of running down and gated and connects up to the port. You've got a couple of fishing boats by the look of it, actually. They look like fishing trawlers, or possibly tugs. And you've got a larger trawler in the background. You've got a few cars scattered around on the foreshore. You've got a former kind of industrial shed in the background, kind of covering the tracks further down, but without any actual roof anymore. There's telegraph poles to one side. You've got the steep cutting wall on the left-hand side, with kind of running up the slope, and a nice kind of church steeple as well. It's all very fetching, actually. A very fetching scene here.
So that's
if tired.
In Cork. Notably, COBH doesn't look like Cove, but it's in Irish.
It's an Irish.
For similar reasons as Kingstown. Queenstown was not a very likeable name.
Cove, famous for being the last place the Titanic called in on.
Yep.
Yes, that's where people should know Cove from.
Right.
Or just this very fetching station. So, right, we crack on. I'm going to continue to have our faces not on here because otherwise we'd be covering up the number, which is 1948, and we have the red. What hand is that? That is a red right hand. Ulster
Red
Transport. Yes.
And we don't know if it's meant to be a left or a right hand. It kind of changes from time to time. We don't really know. No one was really bothered. Anyway, the Ulster Transport Authority. So this is some of their rolling stock, although not a picture from 1948.
It's a bit
of diesel rail cars in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
The Great Northern Railway invested heavily in them to try and cut costs because they did not get nationalisation. And a good few from the Ulster Transport Authority in general. So the background to the UTA was the Belfast and County Down Railway, heading south and east out of Belfast, announced that they would have to close, didn't have enough money, couldn't compete with road transport. So, Transport Act 1948, Northern Ireland this time, they combined it with the Northern Ireland Road Transport Board in order to save it. And in 1949, they added the Northern Counties Committee which had been of the Midland Railway and now from the British Transport Commission.
Yes, I was going to say, the BTC has appeared.
Unfortunately, the UTA were very anti-rail. And even though they had been formed to save the Belfast and County Down Railway, 2 years later, in 1950, they closed the entire thing except for the short commuter line to Bangor.
Good grief.
Yeah. A lot of shock after it. And they continued to be very anti-rail, as we will see.
So, the picture we're looking at now is some rather fetching... In fact, it's pretty standard-looking bullhead rail in bullhead chairs with Mills springs, actually, which ages the photograph to be, very much... 50s, 60s, more like 60s, potentially even early 70s that we're looking at this image. With a kind of this diesel rail car type arrangement, kind of very much, I mean, not Mark 1 derived, but it's of that, it looks like Mark 1 derived equipment, even though it won't be, it'll be of a different vintage, but it's of that look, with the step boards and the general shape of the vehicles. Kind of interesting, if a bit of a hodgepodge. Very fetching black and white photograph, this, though. Some lovely contrast. A lovely bit of sky, some lovely cloud, and some nice hillside in the background. It's a very fetching scene with some quite well-maintained kind of track, relatively speaking. It's not too much trees everywhere. The ballast is, I would say, a little bit shallow for my liking, but nevertheless, it looks all right. But... as you say, Ulster Transport, similar very much to Transport Scotland today, funnily enough, quite anti-rail, or relatively speaking, in terms of its words might be pro-rail, but actions not quite so pro-rail, given how much money has been spent on roads in Scotland in the last 15 years. So, 1948, we jump forward to 1949. We have a picture of, or rather, we have a glorious map here saying the Civic Survey of Dublin and Environs. And there are red lines, there are blue lines. I'm suspicious to say that the red lines appear to be railways. The blue lines appear to be railways. The red lines appear to be the tramway system, because the railway lines are all nice and smooth, and the red lines, the blue lines are all nice and smooth. The red lines seem to follow roads and kink 90 degrees here and there. So I suspect that's what we're looking at.
Indeed. And then there is also a picture related to this map on the right of the screen here, of the last tram to run, technically the last tram of the Dublin United Transport Company to run. In a few slides' time, you'll see why I put that caveat on it.
Yes.
That's the last one to run, as that is why it is being protected by police or on guard, as you call it, I would assume. To stop people stealing bits of it, I suppose.
Say Shaw's sausages when shopping for bacon. That's a strange advert. Pretty sure if you ask for sausages when you're shopping for bacon, you'll get sausages. But anyway, let's not argue with late 1940s advertising. I'm sure they knew what they were doing. There we go. So that's it's a very fetching map. That one.
If we do a transition.
Bam,
gone. Closed.
Oh, it's gone. F's in the chat for the entire Dublin tram system. It's gone.
As a side note, there was one in Cork too, but there's very little information left about that. I don't know when it closes, but it's not as wasn't as significant.
No. So next, we jump to 1953, and we have here a crest of the Great Northern Railway, Ireland. Now, what? Again, we've got a red. This time it's a red left hand. Strangely enough. What? Oh,
not standard at all.
So this is 1953. What's about to happen here? Should we be worried?
Oh, we'll see. So until now, they had escaped nationalisation.
Yep.
Because of the border, the partition of Ireland. However, they were also economically damaged by the partition of Ireland, because I think all of their main lines crossed borders. Some multiple times, as I've said.
Yep.
So, in 1953, it was brought under joint ownership of both countries, and they have to share.
They're gonna share. That's nice, isn't it? When people share,
manage it together.
Yeah.
However, if we move on.
Oh.
That is the end of that railway, and if we move on again.
Oh.
That went too, because in 1958, the Ulster Transport Authority really wanted to close those lines, but CIE were saying no, we want to keep them. So they had a bit of an argument, and on the 30th of September, they were split along the border between the UTA and CIE.
Oh golly!
And yeah, the UTA closed most of the lines. Rolling stock was split by class, leading to like operational inefficiencies as well, where there were like really small fleets.
Oh dear, just
So
sounds like
CIE, they kind of limped on for a while. They couldn't, like half the line was gone in some places. They probably could have kept some open, but at the end of the day, they gave up too.
ugh.
As they did with many lines, they kind of, yeah. Many of them were propped up by freight, but they kind of gave up on a lot of them in the end.
So
this included the Hill of Howth tramway.
Okay, yes. So 1959, the electric tramway to Hill of Howth, the summit here, a very fetching-looking electric tramway. Tell us about this.
So this was built by the Great Northern Railway, because Howth Hill is quite steep. You wouldn't get the train line up there. So it went from Howth Station, which is now in the Dart, up to the summit, down to Sutton Station, which is one stop from the end of the line at Howth. So that was quite handy. They managed to keep it open until they ended up under the ownership of CIE.
Okay,
so
which is good.
This
which
was
is good.
The last tram to run in the country. They said they'd keep it open, but then they didn't.
Oh.
So if we move on, 1959, bye-bye.
I was going to say, that's not an image from 1959. So if we've got 1959 as a date here, then that's not a good thing. It's likely to be a bad thing. RIP to the Hill of Howth tramway. That's a real shame. Okay, we've got to have some good news, right? So it's 1963. We've got some lines on a map here emanating from Belfast. We've got the... actually, this time we're looking at... we're still looking at OpenStreetMap. We've got a very thin black line connecting the border just north of Dundalk through Newry to Portadown. Then from Portadown through Lisburn into Belfast, you've got a kind of a greeny line, and then you've got two lines from there. You've got one to northwards to Larne, and the other one out to. I was going to use the Welsh pronunciation. No, the other one out to Bangor. Which is the I always want to say Bangor, but no, not to Bangor. That would be a very long railway line. No, to Bangor.
I don't actually know how I should be pronouncing it, but I believe it would be Banagher in Irish, so I'll go with that.
Okay, we'll go for well. That's much preferable. I have a very dear friend who's from Bangor, whereas not the Welsh one, the Irish one, the Northern Irish one next to Belfast. So what's going on? It's 1963. Oh, actually, no, I know exactly what's going on if it's 1963, because if Britain had beaching, then Northern Ireland had someone else.
So, this map here is for illustrative purposes. So, 1963 was the Benson Report from Sir Henry Benson. I don't know how prominent a figure he was. From Great Britain, I think.
He's the inventor of Benson's beds. No, he wasn't. Probably no relation.
So, he was recommended by Beeching, I think, to do a report for Northern Ireland.
I'm sure that'll go well.
Yeah, this is basically what he wanted. At this time, in Belfast City, there was no cross-city link that had closed. And there were 3 separate railway termini.
Oh, so there's 3 separate railways, none of them connecting, all emanating out.
But to close every other line, except for these, which were basically suburban Belfast lines. 1 to Portadown, 1 to Bangor, 1 to Larne. And for political purposes, we'll keep a single track between Portadown and the border down to Dublin. Apparently they wanted to close that bit, but, the CIE, Irish government, would have said, no, you can't.
Yeah.
I think they said, no, you can't, to the single track as well. Thankfully, that didn't happen, because there was fierce opposition at closing the second link to Derry. They had already closed one. Now, you may think, okay, maybe a lot of these lines weren't profitable, same as Beeching in Great Britain. But if we move on to the next slide, you'll see that there was something more at play, unfortunately.
Here we go.
So
people have been second-guessing this. People have been second-guessing. Ina, I'm sure those lines don't end up going to suspiciously Protestant places. Yeah, there we go.
So, on this map here, we have, I think, Northern Ireland divided by wards, if I'm remembering
Yes, that's
correctly.
right. Yeah, it's a distribution of Catholic population in Northern Ireland at ward level.
So we have
Yes.
green areas here, which are a high Catholic population, and orange areas here, very fittingly, which are a
Yeah.
high Protestant population. And if we do another lovely transition, we'll get the railway network.
There's the railway network. Now, let's have a little. What's okay, yeah, I can see what's going on here.
You can see why that's the route they chose to keep between Derry and Belfast, and not the other one that went through this dark green patch here in the middle.
Yeah, that's exceptionally aggravating, because it's the most sensible connection. Having a straight line from Derry.
It's causing problems, and there's deprivation, people less well off.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the. I mean, this is a brief digression, but yeah, one of the main challenges we have with potential leftist aspirations for a united Ireland are stymied by the fact that there's not necessarily a huge appetite in the Republic to actually subsume Northern Ireland because of the levels of deprivation in Northern Ireland. It's a bit of an East Germany, West Germany situation. And unfortunately, a lot of that deprivation is focused on the Catholic areas in Northern Ireland, the rural Catholic areas, and indeed, in some cases, more populated Catholic areas. And yeah, here is an example of where I talk a lot about how railways are a critical component in human development and in allowing people choice and opportunity, and denying them railways. This is you drew the comparison to beaching earlier. Beaching, the difference here is that Northern Ireland is not so much having duplicate lines removed. It's just having lifelines removed. It's having complete lifelines removed. It's much less of the beaching logic and much more of a aggressive political chopping of a rail network to the bare minimum type arrangement. It's pretty grim. Not good, really. Not good. In the chat, quite a few people going, saying they want to close the other line to Derry as well, despite going through County Antrim. I assume Protestant opposition to that actually managed to save it in the end. Yeah, I don't know if Ian, if you've got any thoughts on that.
Maybe. Yeah. That's probably it. I think. What was it? Omagh? Where did the railway go through? It went through Omagh anyway, which would be in this green area here. In this, it went through Tyrone anyway, primarily.
Yeah.
And County Derry. Some people will argue that there's never been a County Derry. It should be Londonderry, but that's all other. We'll leave that for now.
We'll leave that for now. Yeah.
I think Omagh. And it was the county council, I think, for Tyrone, tried to take a case. I should have looked this up, but there was some sort of legal action to say, no, you can't take away the railway. People would use it, but they got nowhere with it, which is unfortunate. Yeah,
very frustrating. And actually, to an extent, we've seen a reflection of the. So there's a couple of things. We'll talk about the future. In fact, you know what? No, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to save the future chat for. When we get to that in a future episode. So I'll let you press on. So next, we're jumping. In fact, we're staying in 1963. I recognise a Mark II derived, what appears to be a Mark II derived driving unit in the back, in the rear end there, and then with one of these fetching diesels in the front. Tell what we're looking at. It's a fetching diesel with an orange stripe on a blue. It's kind of a bright blue locomotive with this NR on the side, looking pretty snazzy, and a rather clashy red buffer beam. And then behind it is a red and cream. I strongly suggest that it is a Mark II derived coach in the background there, driving van trailer, or possibly just a double-ended thing. But what the hell is this? And also sitting on some pretty haggard looking track. It's a bit of a mess. It's a station that looks a bit abandoned. It's the 80s, I think, this image, because of the cars in the background. They look suspiciously 80s, potentially mid to late 80s, actually. But what are we looking at? What's going on? Actually, it could even be later than that. It could be 90s, actually.
I don't know. It was a good photo to illustrate the point. Right. Yeah. So under the Ulster Transport Authority's management, the railway network in Northern Ireland shrank from... I only have metric here. I'm afraid.
Oh no, that suits me.
1,450 kilometers to 362 kilometers, which was 25% of its former size. That's massive shrink.
75% chopped and disappears. It's pretty shocking.
Luckily, in 1963, there was some good news.
Ooh.
Northern Ireland Railways. So that's what this NIR is.
Yes.
Lovely logo. I love it. I think they got rid of it, and it's the new ones are just, they're so bad. Especially the newest. NI for Northern Ireland, uncapitalised, so it's just NI Railways.
It's hopeless. This is great. It's just so angular. It's a bit Sol Bass. I quite like it.
Anyway, so they were much more pro-rail, and they really wanted to do something with the railway network. So I'm afraid I don't really know much about the rolling stock of Northern Ireland and the history of it. A wide range, we'll say. They had a lot of different things. Some stuff had come from Great Britain and been repurposed, and lots of diesel rail cars.
I've just realised that the NIR logo there is actually kind of a map of the Northern Irish Railway network. It's kind of like it is, yeah. It is a bit. Anyway, sorry.
I wonder, is that intentional?
Yeah, it might well be. Yeah. Anyway, okay, right. So there's that. Let's press. Yeah. I sorry, I won't get us bogged down. Yeah. In terms of rolling stock, it was a real hodgepodge of like. It was like basically like a hodgepodge of Irish stuff and random British scraps that have been rebogied over here. It's a very strange mix. So we jump forward to 1976.
I said they were pro-rail, and they NIR made some good changes. And one of the changes. So what we are looking at here, we are under a road bridge, I'd say. This is Belfast Lanyon Place station. At the time, it was called Belfast Central. So you can see the thinking behind this. What they did is they got the old Belfast Central Railway, I think was the name of it, which had been built as a line to connect the Great Northern Railway with the Belfast and County Down Railway, with the docks in Belfast, and then from the docks through to the Northern Counties Railway. So they brought that back into use, replaced a few bridges, and I don't have a picture of it here, I don't think. They built a new bridge over the River Foyle. Foyle? Lagan. What am I saying? Foyle is Derry. Terrible. Anyway.
I'm speechless because I'm looking at the state of this is fairly recently laid track by the look of it, or at least in reasonable condition track. But the actual track itself is a 50p piece. It's a real. It's
corners on it, and
good grief. There is no designed geometry here. This is anarchy. I'm just going to quickly read out BJ Turon. Thanks for the sponsored chat. I don't know. I have no idea how it works. The moneyed chat, but I'd never heard the word fetching used so many times. Yeah, sorry. It was it's a fetching experience. Sorry. Yeah. So black and white image we're looking at. On the left hand side, we've got what looks like something in like an executive livery. It's a kind of quite a BR looking livery actually. This, even though it is decidedly not a British Rail livery, but it's got that kind of dark stripe under the dark window beam. Again, I dare say because the rolling stock will be may well be British derived rolling stock, so they've kind of copied the livery a bit to match. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's this image has got to be fairly recent because there's some Pomo architecture on the left hand side. There's some what looks like some postmodern architecture that's popped up, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this is actually a fairly recent image, more recent than the black and white would suggest.
So what they did is they repurposed this old Belfast Central Railway, brought it back into use, built the bridge, single track though, which is a problem. There's a passing loop in the middle, but at that stage, why not do a double track bridge?
Yeah,
anyway,
confusing.
It's a sign of the times.
Yeah.
And that linked the three former terminus stations. Well, it didn't quite link Great Victoria Street. That was on a bit of a spur. And at that stage, the terminus stations had been damaged through the Troubles and through the Belfast Blitz, and they were not in a good shape. Some of them was missing they all closed, and they were all replaced with this Belfast Central here. So basically, the whole country's rail network then ended up like a through-running suburban rail network.
Yeah, yeah. Which, for operationally is actually kind of fine. That works.
Now, they did mess this up later on because people were annoyed that it's Belfast Central. It wasn't very central. It was kind of at the edge of the city centre.
So you could do something on the cheap. That is what happens. Yeah, true.
Yeah, so they then brought Great Victoria Street Station back into use, but with a much worse station building.
Oh.
I don't know when they did it, but then operations changed and everything runs there now, except for the Enterprise, which still runs to Lanyon Place.
There we go. So
it's a lot messier now than what they had intended.
Yeah, it sounds like things haven't actually got better. They've just bodged it to be more useful, but without actually building anything new, or without really kind of spending the money that ought to be spent to build a proper rail network. So that's 1976. Jump forward to 1984. Something exciting is happening. Something very exciting is happening, in fact.
Right. So 23rd of July. We have an opening. So finally opening instead of closing. Here we have a little 8100 class dart built by Linke Hoffmann Busch of Germany. At the time, well, they're all still 2 cars, but you won't see them running as 2-car units. They'll all be hooked up into 6 or 8-car units.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I think they still have CIE logos on them there. So that's a fairly early picture, I'd say. So electrification, first electrification in the country. By God, did it take a while. And it wasn't much either. It's electrified to 1500 volts DC, which is now a bit of a problem when they want to do intercity services because there's a bit of track sharing here and there. Yeah, well, there's a fair bit of track sharing, to be fair. Quite a lot.
It's frustrating because it was, again, you usually go for DC to reduce the physical work to provide clearances because you get lower clearances with DC. But as you say, it's a shortcoming in terms of the power supply. It's very expensive to get juice into a DC railway. You need a lot more substations. And also, as you say, that you cannot have DC long distance services. It doesn't really work. You can't get the power. So, yeah, it's a bit of a problem. There's not an easy fix any point soon either at the moment. No easy fix planned.
They'll just have to separate DART and intercity services. But we will come to that, maybe with a little bit of talk about the rail review in a future episode.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of people going, why on earth did they electrify at 1.5 kV in 1984 when 25 kV was such an obvious standard? Yeah,
I don't know.
I would suggest it was for similar reasons to the UK sticking with or using DC for Metrolink. It was for the sake of reducing cost because it's cheaper in terms of physical work to structures. It's cheaper to electrify with DC than it is for AC. You don't need or at the time you didn't need the significant structure clearances that you do for 25 kV for HV overheads.
And they didn't have a lot of money for this sort of stuff. This was replacing some old suburban services using very tired diesel rail cars. I mean, I can't attest to this myself, but I have heard stories that in the plastic seats that there were holes drilled in them to let water drain out from leaks in the roof that were up on seats. So.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. It's worth very briefly. It's funny you talk about electrification. It's funny because one of the pioneering electrification engineers, in fact, the pioneering electrification engineer for the islands, the cluster of islands that is Britain and Ireland, Great Britain and Ireland, James Henry O'Brien, Henry Owen O'Brien. Sorry, there's no James in there. Henry Owen O'Brien from the south of Ireland, as in the actual south coast, worked for the GSWR and became the chief. Eventually became the chief mechanical electrical engineer of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway, and then and in doing so pioneered the use of electrification for suburban trains, not in his home of Ireland, but in Mersey, what would become the Merseyrail network, in fact. Although at the time it was with overhead electric. No, it was third rail electrification, but it's not a continuous into the modern third rail that's there. Anyway, he also championed electrifying the when that became the LNWR, or rather kind of merged with the LNWR. He championed electrification of the line going over Shap, so the what's now the West Coast Main Line, and then when the Midland Railway kind of combined with that to form the LMS, he was off the case because he made a very big fuss about the need for electrification, and the Midland Railway had never cared about electrification, and so they sacked him rather unceremoniously. So yeah, interesting story about that chap. I'd recommend reading his biography. It's very interesting. Interesting man. Anyway, so it's interesting that it took this long. He was a pioneer of electrification in the turn of the, in the 1910s, 1920s. Took it until 1984 until we see electrification in his home, which is a bit sad, really.
Well, for many reasons, the country did not have a lot of money.
Yeah,
not a very smooth process of independence, although a lot better than most countries. Couple of questionable economic policies throughout the years, maybe. Just a lack of care for the railways, really, by this stage.
Yeah, make do amend.
They had realised that they needed to get a suburban network going in Dublin. And as a side note, then Dart was extended south to Greystones, only along single track though, and north to Malahide in 2000. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so we'd better move on to the next slide.
Yes, Gareth is pointing out that the smaller of the three tower blocks in the background was the HQ of the Central Bank of Ireland. Shang Lucy is pointing out that Dublin had a battery electric line during 1932. Very interesting. And Daniel Smith, in fact, Ina is saying 3 kilovolt DC would be 4 times more expensive to operate. If I remember correctly, it's actually more expensive than going to 25 kV directly. Very interesting. Thank you, Ina, for that one. And Detour is saying, I had the joy of experiencing those horrible 80s seats. Lovely. Marvellous. So, 1987, and a fabulous bit of logo type here. I'm a big fan of the Irish Rail, of this era of Irish Rail logo, actually.
My favourite Irish Rail logo.
It's very good. Tell us what's happened.
They should never have changed.
Yes.
But you've got the Irish there and everything. Lovely.
Yeah. It's very good.
1987. CIE, despite managing to deliver the Dart in Dublin, they were really struggling to operate transport, especially the railways. Many lines, as I said, were propped up by freight, and they closed to passengers before closing to freight. However, you would get the occasional GAA special to bring people to All Ireland finals and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Loads of those around the country, which I find funny. People still wanted to use the railway, just not a lot of travel. So, along with the poor financial state of the country, there was kind of a public feeling of make CIE pay, why can't they make money off the railways? We don't want to spend money on them. I'm sure there was loads of media interference and hyping it up, I suppose. I don't know.
Ireland's right-wing press pushing on the railways should be paying. They should be paying their way. Boo! That sort of rubbish.
Anyway, in 1987, CIE was changed to a holding company of the following: Iarn Road Éireann, an Irish Rail, Bus Éireann, and Dublin Bus. Now, as we can see, it's what cities get their own bus network? Dublin. What cities have to share with the national operator? All of the others. Cork, Limerick.
Every single other one, yeah. When they should have their own suburban bus networks, municipal bus companies, absolutely.
And I wonder why Dublin got so much bigger than the other cities. Anyway.
Yeah. I have to say, the logos are weak on the other two compared to the Irish Rail logo. It's a shame. It's a real shame.
Although I do like the little DB for Dublin Bus and a bit
it's not bad.
Tower for the castle, which I believe comes from the crest.
Okay, very nice.
Also, the Bus Éireann dog is.
Yeah, we love a dog. I mean, we love a dog. We all love a dog. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Anyway.
So that's actually a lot of love coming through for the Dublin Bus logo. I take it back. There's much love coming through the chat for the Dublin Bus logo. Fair, very nice.
I don't know. Later on, future episodes as we talk about
absolutely, yeah.
more about the present, we may see some iterations on the logo.
So we jumped to 1994. I exist now. I've been made to exist. I'm multiple years old. I live in Inverurie. I'm wearing purple shoes. I'm very excited about life. And we have here on screen something that looks suspiciously similar to the sorts of things that British Rail Engineering Limited were pumping out, but isn't. This is the Arrow. Tell us about what we can see on screen. This orange and black with white finishing diesel multiple unit here.
So this is Houston Station again, I'd say.
Yes.
This time looking in at the station, in at the train shed. Very dark underneath that train shed. The roof was very dirty until they cleaned it up recently. I say recently, that's probably a while ago now.
Yeah.
This here is, as you said, an Arrow train painted in the lovely orange and black livery, which Irish Rail used for all trains, and I'd say CIE did for a while as well. There were variations. And it's a multiple unit, a diesel multiple unit, built by the... I didn't write it down now. I think it was built by the Tokyo Car Corporation.
Yeah, it's Tokyo. It's It is indeed the Tokyo Car Corporation. It bears a striking resemblance to a Class 158, but it is unrelated. Like, it is entirely a Japanese built train.
And for those interested, it is a 2600 class. And this one here, 2601.
There it is.
So, in a similar vein to the Dart, although not with electrification this time, they thought, well, we need to get more suburban services going in Dublin. So they thought of this lovely brand, Arrow. They should bring back that name, because I mean, when we get electric service in Cork, like, no one wants to call it the Cart. I'd say bring back the Arrow.
Bring back the
Anyway,
Arrow. Yeah.
I would show you the logo, but you can't find it anywhere other than in photos of trains. So it was largely made possible by EU funding, which is
nice. Thanks, EU.
Yeah, always a plus. And it was to reintroduce a service to Kildare, because loads of stations out that line had closed because it was only double track, and it saw most of the country's intercity services to, like, Kilkenny, Waterford, Cork, Limerick.
It's the classic sacrifice the local services for long distance services conundrum. Yeah.
So all of the local stations closed. Also, as well, they had chucked in some of the old Midland Great Western Railway services to, like, Galway and Westport, because they closed a double track link that eventually led you into the north of Dublin to Broadstone Station, in favour of a single track link to all of the other intercity services. Sligo trains then ended up in Connolly as well to add to the clump everything together, cause delays.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
at least they got this service back in. It wasn't frequent. Again, as I said, they didn't do any track widening at that stage. No 4-track.
No.
However, that was to come later.
That was to come later. So we jump forward to 2004. I spy something different. These aren't mainline trains. These look like trams.
Oh yes.
That's exciting.
So this picture is not from 2004, because I took it myself. There was a small problem where I didn't exist in 2004.
Oh, don't say that. I can't have conversations with an adult who didn't exist in 2004. Now I feel old now. Oh, golly.
Anyway, well,
look at
these.
The
Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis is here. These very fetching trams. Very nice.
Now, the yellow band was added later, I think, because it was kind of hard to see an all-grey tram in the city.
Yeah, it's a bold choice of colour, actually, is to just paint a tram completely grey.
Little purple line as well at the top. I think the purple should match the line colour, but that's a different story.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
2 lines, red line, green line. They were disconnected on opening. 1 kilometre gap between them. So you just have to walk, because a couple of politicians went, no, it'd be too much hassle, and you'd mess up the traffic on O'Connell Street, which is the main street in the city. It's this one here.
Yeah.
That single track heading north there. Tram we're looking along the length of. That's going along O'Connell Street, and that is the green line. That opened in, Oh, when did that open? I want to say 2017, but I could be completely wrong with that. People might mention in chat.
I'm sure the chat will come up with the corrections. Yeah, Christoph is saying if it makes us feel better, or if it makes me feel better, Christoph et al. I've got students this semester who are even younger than your guest. Yeah, Ian. I know. Well, you can be born in 2004 and you can be born after 2004 and be 20 years old, which is. Whew, I know, right? I'm an aging, decrepit old man now. It's very depressing. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you, Ian. Go on.
So, initially, this line running along O'Connell Street wasn't there because the couple of politicians just too much traffic chaos. They said, so they just cut that bit out. We'll do it later, okay. and we'll have the metro anyway. So like, it doesn't matter that there's a gap. We did not get the metro, and we're still waiting on the metro. But future episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the red line then crossing in front of us with tram number 4008 there. I don't know the tram numbering system as well. So this was 750 volt DC. Again, as you were saying.
Yeah, that's standard stuff for street trams. That makes sense. Yeah, it's fine.
And 48.2 million passengers in 2023, and I think I spotted somewhere on Twitter recently that it's going to exceed 50 million passengers this year, which I think is more than the entire railway network in the Republic of Ireland.
That's quite something.
Like it shows the success.
Yeah, it shows how
there's people who opposed it then saying, "Oh, no one will use it; it'll be a waste of money, and it'll ruin the city." And now they're saying, no, let's not do the metro. Let's just do more trams.
Yeah, people never get the right message, or the politicians never get the right message, do they? It's like, no, this is successful, and it's probably about as successful as it can be already because trams have a limitation. You need a metro. Like, it's a dense enough city that it needs a metro. It's a dense city, It's a densely populated area.
And then on the other hand, there's Cork, which they really want a tram, and there's a development plan now, and they'll get it before I think 2042, which is so long.
I know. It's
anyway. Hopefully they'll get it going soon.
But we resist talking about it. But we must.
Also many urban motorways.
Yeah, I was going to say lots of road building happened, and we have to resist because we could talk a lot about the current situation. But we are going to resist doing that. Partly, I'm conscious of time. We've run a bit long.
Yes.
We will be talking about the present next time. Ian, that's been. I'm going to go back to our large faces. Thank you so much for that potted history of getting us through why the railways. And I'm very pleased you include urban transit. I'm glad you included the trams because it's an important. Railways is railways. A very good tour through. Thank you for that. Everyone, line up your questions. I am going to whiz through the outro stuff, but we'll be back to Ian momentarily while I wrap up. So send your questions in, and I will say, everyone, listen to this in audio only format. I hope this was okay. I think it was. We audio described most of the images. Available on all good podcasting platforms, of course. The usual plugs: patreon.com/Gareth Dennis to support me. I very much appreciate the support on Patreon at the moment for various stupid reasons. It's now my main, and it won't be for a huge amount of time, I hope, but currently it's my main source of income. So thank you, Patreon supporters, for paying my wage for a bit. More on that later. GarethDennis.co.uk/merch for the merchandise. PayPal.me/GarethDennis for loose change and abuse. And of course, the chat, you wonderful people there. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the chat to continue ad infinitum. There is another bit, though, that I have to plug because the book is very much available for pre-order. Please do pre-order it because the more pre-order sales we get, the more the publisher will be very happy and will fund me to do more exciting things like going on tour with it when it eventually comes out on sale. So we've done a really good job of bumping up to first and second place in railway history, but we are in overall railway books, we're kind of bouncing around the kind of 5th, 6th place location. I want us to get to the top. If we can beat Walmart's 99p bargain bin British Rail pop history, that's on Kindle only, for some reason annoyingly in the overall rankings. If we can get rid of that and put me on the top spot, that would be very nice. So let's do that, everyone. So as many pre-sales as possible, because it'd be nice to get up there. But the premise of the book is simple. You can watch the episode last week for understanding what the book's about. The premise is simple. Train good, brackets, asterisk. Yeah, pre-order now. I want to plug Ian's YouTube, actually. Anon Ian on YouTube. There's also a link tree for other bits and pieces, but there's a few good videos on there, and everyone likes the animations. Very, very pleased about the animations. We've already had that feedback. And a couple of things. Firstly, in 10 minutes, there's going to be an Archipelago series episode. It may or may not work, and we're just going to make do with whether the tech breaks again or not. I've attempted a third attempt to get it all working, but it may fail. And you know what? We'll cope because I want to crack on with it a bit. And next week, it's Rail Natter talking about an airplane crash. Episode 227, the crash of Independent Air Flight 1851, because it's a very interesting crash with everything that could go wrong going wrong, and it's very interesting. Everyone, thank you so much for watching, but we have a chance to answer a few brief questions before we disappear. Before we do that, in fact, not before we do that, we're going to go through the questions. Lots of people saying great historical review, and thank you, very enlightening. Thanks very much indeed. Marvelous. Good. Everyone saying lots of the book. Thank you. Yes, the book. People are excited about the book. Raphael, happy to be your intermittent employee. Yeah, all of my Patreon people are now my actual employer, and also pointing out the metadata has not been updated. But yeah, I need to contact my publisher and tell them to push that. Daniel Field. By the way, Daniel, I did see your message earlier. Thanks for pre-ordering. Would something like Dart be a good model for West Yorkshire Mass Transit? Also, thanks once again. Ian is a great guest. My answer to that is yes. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on. Well, do you think Dart's a good system, Ian? Do you like Dart? Do you think it's effective?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy using it, but I may be a bit biased in that. I mean, it's frequent, but like that's only on the Irish standards. It's probably the most frequent service in the country, but that's I think 10 minutes through the core and every 20 minutes on the northern branches. And that's mostly because there's the outer commuter line up to Drogheda that has to share track, and also the Enterprise, of course, which I think is the slowest intercity service in the country because it has to share with the Dart and also the Belfast suburban services. But overall, it's good to have electric services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice to use.
100%, yeah. Doorhanger 93. It was very lovely seeing you at the KJP. Everyone who saw, shout out to everyone who saw me at the and came to say hello at the Kill James Bond live show on Sunday evening. I had a great fun at the show. What a night it was. Mr. Guy Snails. Hello, Mr. Guy Snails. Lovely to have you on here. Should a Houston-Connolly link be built strictly as urban transport, or should it also have intercity services in mind? You can give a brief answer to that, because I'm sure we can discuss that in more detail. There might be a thing we can discuss in the next episode, or possibly even a third episode on what you think the long-term plans, future plans ought to be. But it's a good question. So, Mr. Guy Snails, join us for the next one. I might hold on that.
Hotly contested topic.
Hotly contested topic, absolutely. Lots of discussions. Okay, yeah, good stuff. There's discussions about... there's lots of discussions about future episodes. Yes, we should have a trolleybus episode. Detour is pointing out that Dart is limited by level crossings. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And
I think if they made it more frequent on the Howth branch, Sutton level crossing would be just permanently down.
Yeah. Having worked on it, the level crossings are pretty much constraining. They're very much severely constraining capacity now.
Future episodes, though?
Yes.
They may be going.
Ooh, well, yes, actually, I think I've seen some of the... Anyway, actually, having been released from my employment, I can, again, more in the Discord server, everyone, I can freely talk about what I know from what's going on over there. Yes, and yeah, the plans are very much to make those disappear. Let's see, so there's an interesting one here, actually, which you might be able to answer. Christoph et al. Is asking, what's the rationale for the lack of intermodal connectivity in so many of these post-nationalisation expansions? The fact that you can't get to Ireland's airports except by bus. So, yeah, there are expansions, but they don't include the airports. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ian?
Well, there were good, I suppose, upgrades of service after having been cut back. But really, there was no new track built anywhere. Maybe reinstating lines. Yeah. That was it, really, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And even in more recent years, lines closed, like between Waterford and Rosslare in the south. That primarily closed because what should be one long line was a whole load of short lines that you'd have to change at each junction station to actually get along. There was going to be some. Now, I didn't mention Transport 21. That was a transport project for the whole country, included motorways, loads for the railways, around 2007, 2008. So that all got slammed out of the way with the financial crash.
Yeah. Wop. Yeah.
A lot of the planned expansions of the network never happened, except for a short section of 4-track near Euston Station in Dublin, which did allow for better service to local stations.
Yeah. Shang, we will definitely cover rail transit for Cork City and Cork Area Rapid Transit for sure. We'll be looking at that, yes. I think my mouse has just died, so I'm just going to unplug my Wacom and plug in the my mouse. There we go, to just recover that. I never have to charge this thing apart from in the middle of an episode. Right, so dig a hole under the rail and build a bridge. Right, okay, so I'm going to draw under that. Ian, thank you so much. That's been lots of love in the chat for that episode. I've enjoyed that very much. A very, very good tour of a potted history, but a very neat history. Kind of really describing why the railways are the shape they are. It was very much requested. You jumped in and offered, and I'm looking forward to talking about what the railways look like now and what they might look like in the future for a future episode coming up soon. Not confirmed yet, but it'll be soon. I'm sure we'll pick up those very soon. Everyone, from Ian and I, it only remains for us to wave cheerio. Cheerio, everyone. Cheerio.